Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special Monday edition of Weekend Waypoints. Ignore the banner there at the top that says Sunday. We just don't have a Monday background, but this is a Monday episode of Weekend Waypoints, wrapping up the College World Series. We're going to talk about LSU's 8th national championship victory, wrap up the College World Series in general. This is the last Weekend Waypoints episode of the season. Kind of bittersweet. On one hand, it's kind of nice to put a bow on the season and move on to the summer and start getting excited about the 2026 season. On the other hand, season's been a lot of fun, and so I will miss that and miss that aspect of it. One last time before we get anything specific, I have to remind you that this episode of Weekend Waypoints and every episode of Weekend Waypoints this entire season has been brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. The sun's out and the fun is on at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Score a cool pool, savor summer flavor with the grill, prep for fishing weekends, or mount up with a new mountain bike. However you have fun, you can't lose with our top brands. Gear up online at academy.com or at your local store. All right, first off, congratulations to you Tiger fans watching. Another national title, that's the 8th. That is second behind only USC, which has 12. But now there's some distance between LSU at 8 and Texas at 6. And I saw this, Ryan McGee of ESPN wrote that, about this being LSU being the greatest college baseball program of all time. And I think that's probably right when you consider that USC did what it did. Its dominance, at one point winning 5 straight national championships in the 70s was just done at a time when college baseball wasn't as competitive as it is now. There's just a lot more to deal with now. And so that we have to honor that USC run, but at the same time understand that the context here, and certainly the best modern college baseball program. And if you were watching the live stream that I just did with Kendall, Aaron, and Runes, which you can go back and watch on YouTube as well and on social media, Aaron made the point of that we are in the kind of the second golden age of LSU baseball. Obviously Skip Bertman had one. Then, there's national titles kind of spread out, the 2009 title, and then it took a while to get to the 2023 championship. But now they've clustered a couple together here 2 out of 3 years, and it really does feel like a golden age of Tiger baseball again. So congrats to all you LSU fans out there. It's always fun to have LSU out here in Omaha. It gives the city a certain level of vibrancy. Omaha's vibrant this time of year regardless, but certainly with LSU fans here, it tends to be on another level. So it's always cool to see them show out the way they do. I'll pull up the box score for the game so we can get a little bit of an idea here and use it as a guide to talk about it a little bit. Here we go. LSU, here is your championship winning box score. 5-3 victory. An early start for Coastal Carolina with the Dean Mijos home run. And that was the thing with Ianson, who pitched well. We'll go down to his stats: 6 1/3, 7 hits, 3 runs, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts. He basically had 2 pitches that hurt him. It was the Mijos home run in the 2nd inning. Then there was a Wells Sykes home run in the 7th inning as he was at the end of his outing, where cement mixered a slider up there and yanked it into the bullpen. Other than that, he was really, really good, and that he gave them what they needed. And on the flip side, LSU made it to where Jacob Morrison did not give Coastal Carolina what they needed. He ends up not getting out of the 4th inning, giving up 5 runs. LSU's offense, kind of in the 3rd and 4th inning, really made it hurt. The 4th inning in particular, you had some great at-bats in that inning. You can go back and read Mike Rooney's piece from yesterday, and he specifically has a section about that 4th inning. But you get 2 2-run singles from Chris Stanfield and Derek Curiel. And that really opened the game up. And it kind of felt like, to be honest, at that point it's 5-1. It kind of felt at that point like this is done and dusted. So kudos to Coastal. They get the Sykes home run, and they were kind of back in the game. Ultimately, Chase Shores comes on, though, and he throws great again. 2 and – what is it? Let me scroll down. 2 1/3, 2 2/3, 2 2/3. 4 strikeouts, just the 1 hit allowed. Really good work from him. And I think Chase Shores is kind of an avatar, kind of indicative of what has made this LSU team special, in that he was a guy that has had his ups and downs. He was more or less booted from the rotation, right? And I think in a lot of cases, when that kind of thing happens, that pitcher is kind of on the fast track to just being forgotten a little bit. And instead, LSU got him ready to be a high leverage reliever. Obviously, this stuff is good. you're always going to want to find a role for a guy who can, touch 101, and he did several times in the outing yesterday. But, once your original role for him doesn't work out, it does kind of send you scrambling a little bit to figure out what to do. And LSU right now, better than any team in the country, does a fabulous job of using its whole roster and preparing its whole roster for these kinds of moments. And Shore is a great example of that. Ethan Fry, I think, Ethan Fry ends up being, one of the more dependable hitters in this lineup. And early in the season, he wasn't in there every day. But by the end of the season, he was, and he was batting second, right? And they never flinched when Stephen Milam was struggling at the plate. Never flinched when Jared Jones went through, kind of a horrific slump in the second half of SEC play. Never really flinched when Michael, they're okay with Michael Braswell hitting one whatever because they love his steady hand and his defense and all of that stuff. And that paid off because defense for him was a huge thing in this series. So that's what stands out to me is when I get asked on radio, and I have been asked on radio, even just this morning, about how did this LSU team win it when it's, the 2023 team was just so talented. This team is not that in terms of talent. It is talented, don't get me wrong, but there's no Skeens, there's no Dylan Cruz, there's not even really Tommy White in terms of guys that you just think, yeah, that guy's going to go play in the big leagues for a decade at least. There's not that. There will be big leaguers on this team, I'm sure, but there aren't just those like next level guys. And to me, the biggest reason they did that is just because they used the whole roster and they deployed players in the right spots perfectly. And I think that's kind of Jay Johnson's superpower is being able to have the whole roster available to him all season long and understanding what each guy is going to bring to the table in specific settings. Let me close out of this. Got some comments waiting. Let me roll over to those real quick. Jeremy Scott, with college baseball season over, the countdown to football season begins. Yeah, and as we, as the college baseball season, kind of ends basically is we're a week away from July. I mean, SEC media days for football has to be like in what, a month? Like maybe not even. Yeah. So football will be here very, 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 very quickly. I think this is a reference to Aaron Fitt made the comment on our live stream a little bit ago. The LSU are the Yankees of college baseball in terms of love them or hate them. You're always going to have an opinion of them. And maybe it was Runes that made that point, but he says, if LSU is Yankees of college baseball, do they have torpedo bats? I don't think so, but perhaps that's on the way. Perhaps that's coming. Max says deeper this season, though, especially on the mound, comparing this team to the 23 team. Yeah, that's fair. I think that's totally fair. I mean, the 2023 team on the pitching staff was built out of Paul Skeens. Like the entire boat was built out of Paul Skeens and then like a sprinkling of everyone else, So you're right. I think the mound was deeper. I think that's totally fair, Mac. It's a good point. Michael Roby says, does LSU have the number one recruiting class? If so, how many players do you think they can keep from not going to the pro draft? Y'all do great work. Thank you. Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Haven't looked at the recruiting classes yet. But I have to imagine they're up there, right? And recruiting class now, I think we have to include the portal guys, and they've been somewhat light on portal, and that makes sense because they've been focusing on being here. And I think, you can do both, obviously, but Braden Simpson they brought in from High Point, very good player, going to start on the infield for them, physical guy. Seth Darter, another, first base, corner outfield type guy, maybe. But a physical presence offensively. I think those guys will be instant impact guys. It's also a really good, I think more so than focusing on the recruiting class, although I think that's fair. And we will talk about that. The returning class though, like I think that's, where you really start to get excited for LSU with Curiel back in the fold, the freshman pitchers and Kason Evans and guy, William Schmidt, who, kind of faded as the season went on, but like was so good early and just showed you, what he's capable of. They will have some drafted guys, but, who's to say, a Danny Dickinson, who is a prospect, but he's not an elite, like lock first rounder. And LSU tends to get some of those guys back. I'm not saying I'm not guaranteeing they will, but some of those fringy guys, you could see a scenario where, they just decide, hey, especially now in this NIL era where it's like, yeah, I can make a little bit of money playing college baseball again, and the draft will be there next time around. And so kind of like Jared Jones did last offseason, where a guy just decides, look, I'll have my shot at pro ball eventually. I'm not a first round draft pick. I'm going to go back and try to win a national title at LSU. And then, you make a little money along the way, and that's great. And then you'll have your chance at pro ball. So I do think there will also be some of that, but I think more than that, it's just this team was young in some spots, and to be able to get a lot of those guys back, Milam will be back, obviously, like to get those foundational pieces back, I think is the biggest piece of it. And then I assume they're not done in the portal. I assume they've got some freshmen who, the other thing is, I'm assuming they have some freshmen that do what Derek Curiel decided to do, what Kate Arambidi decided to do, and go to college instead of signing out of high school. They'll probably get some of those guys too. So I think if I'm doing a field of 8 for Omaha here today, I mean, LSU's in it. That seems pretty easy for me to predict them there. Max says 3 weeks till SEC media days, but who's counting? Woof. Yeah, it's coming up fast. Patrick Yankee says, I'm already so excited for the upcoming Batcats. They've invested in the portal incoming class and returners. Yeah, they've done a nice job in the portal. And I think this is for Kentucky. This is the result of what we've seen the last few years, where it used to be, I've said this before, like Kentucky would have a good year, and the next year you could pretty much guarantee they were just going to kind of fall back to, the bottom tier of the SEC. And this year, and they'd be out of the postseason mix altogether. This year wasn't that. They clawed their way back to a regional, and they played pretty well in that regional and won some games. So on top of, the success the previous 2 years, and I think so we're seeing the benefit of that, the result of that in portal recruiting this year, where they've already brought in a strong class. I'm pulling it up now just to see the numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys already. And it's talented guys with some track record, on good teams. Scott Campbell, an outfielder from a regional team at USC Upstate, Tyler Sterney who's been a very good player at Indiana for several years, like Jack Bennett, who was a key pitcher for a Western Kentucky team that was in a regional this year. So on and on and on. It looks like a strong portal class. And so it seems like, again, with a young core, Kentucky brings back its middle infield with Luke Lawrence and Tyler Bell, obviously. Schwartz is back in the mix. He was an impact guy as a freshman. Ben Cleaver will be back in the rotation. So that's you're right to be excited, Patrick. I think I'm with you there. Jimmy Henry says, love the coverage from Omaha. Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that. I was proud of myself and my colleagues. I felt like we really did a pretty comprehensive job of covering it. We had four individual written pieces from each of the CWS finals games, which I don't think we've ever had 4 individual pieces done for single games before. But I think most of the umpires need to manage the emotions, but I think most of the emotions stem from judgment calls on balls and strikes. Why not robo-umps for CWS? Yeah, when and if MLB goes to the automated strike zone, I think it's only a matter of time before college goes there. You just got to kind of be patient with it. Obviously, and there's more if you go back and watch the live stream that we just did with Kendall, Aaron, and Runes. We touch on this a lot more. For me, my biggest thing is I've never understood because nobody was really in the right. Like if you're Kevin Schnall, you have to understand, hey, it's the first inning. I need to keep my powder dry here. Also, Angel Campos, the home plate umpire, did not do a good job. Like his job is to diffuse situations. He escalated the situation. And that seems to happen a lot, not just with him, but a lot of college umpires escalating situations. My big thing is I don't understand why, and I'm sorry for repeating myself if you watch the live stream, but I don't really understand why we can't just let coaches chirp about strike zones. Like if a coach just wants to sit in the dugout and tell me my strike zone is terrible, fine. Like let him do that. We do that in football. Like if you watch college football, you see all the time a head coach standing on the sideline or a referee standing right by the sideline with the head coach right behind him, just screaming at him. And the referee's just like stone face looking ahead. and why we can't do that. Like why the umpire has to warn a head coach standing 100 feet away from him in the dugout to stop talking is kind of beyond me. I don't totally understand, because they're complaining about your strike zone. So what? I just don't understand that. And it feels like to your point, Jimmy, like balls and strikes tend to be the thing that very rarely is it, especially with replay, very rarely is it a call on the bases that causes these issues. It almost always stems from balls and strikes, and just feels like we can, yes, the automated strike zone would fix basically all of that. But if we're not going to do that, can we at least just let them chirp? Like, I don't know who it's hurting. Like, if the guy's, if he comes out on the field and is standing on home plate to where you can't continue the game, okay, let's toss him because he's holding up the game. But as long as he's staying in the dugout, like, I don't particularly care. At least that's the way I think about it. Sean says, isn't the issue that only the head coach is allowed to chirp? I mean, that's technically true. It was a Coastal assistant that originally got warned. Still dumb, but a slight difference, I suppose. Yeah, I guess. Like, but there again, Sean, like, I see your point. Like, I don't disagree with you. But then it's also like, just let them all talk. If it becomes I don't know, if you're MF and the umpire and talking about his mother, like, maybe that's a different story. But if he's just like, your strike zone is terrible, it's like, well, that's your opinion, and maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. Because also, by the way, it is kind of half and half. Like, I have the benefit of having TrackMan pulled up while I'm watching games, and a lot of times coaches are right, their strike zones are terrible, and a lot of times they're wrong. So that's always funny to me. But yeah, I just feel like we're over policing at least that element of the game. And you make a good point, Sean. Like, the calls to the bases are really the issue because they're reviewable. So again, I used to be kind of like, oh, do we really need the automated strike zone? And now I'm just like, it would fix so much of this situation. Would not happen with an automated strike zone. Also, like, I find, like, I get that if you're a fan, like, part of the fun of the games is just heckling umpires. Like, I get it. But also, like, it does feel like sometimes games get out of hand because everyone, coaches, fans, players, whatever, are on the umpire's rear end from the first inning. And that umpire just gets like, he just gets to a point where he just can't contain it anymore. And he feels like he has to do something about it. Again, with automated strike zone, like, that ends. The fans, you can't argue with a robot. Like, it is what it is. The striker, it's not. So that would stop. The coaches would stop. The players, anyway. So yes, there's a lot of discussion to be had here in the offseason. At a bare minimum, there needs to be more trust between coaches and umpires. Right now, it feels like that trust is totally broken. Where I think umpires don't trust coaches to respect boundaries. I also don't think coaches I don't think coaches expect umpires to be able to diffuse situations effectively and do their jobs effectively. Anyway, I think again, like, there aren't really any heroes in this situation. Although I did like Kevin Schnall's line where the umpire that tripped and then blamed it on Kevin Schnall when clearly Kevin Schnall didn't bump him. When Kevin Schnall says, I shouldn't be held accountable for another man's athleticism. That's just like an all-time Hall of Fame level line there. DeGoat, you heard, says, did you give Fit his bottle? He needs a nap. Aaron was worked up about it, but I think he has a right to be honest. Like, I think the rant was justified. Like, it was kind of a clown show yesterday, regardless of where it didn't affect the game. Like, I think we're all clear about that. Like, LSU was just a better team. They just played better. But, like, it just sucks that so much of the discussion after a national championship clinching game is that we're talking about how terrible the umpires were, just kind of sucks. Caleb Falk says, what's up, Joe? What's up, Caleb? Good to hear from you. Safe to say the championship will help with recruiting. Yep. I think that's safe to say. Like, right now, if you're a player considering multiple high-level programs, like, it's hard to argue against the fact that LSU right now feels like the one that's given you the best chance to win a national title, just because they've won 2 out of the last 3. Jimmy says, I think one of the reasons Jay Johnson's so good is his even keel. Emotion isn't as much of an advantage for baseball as it is for football. Agree. Intense coaches are playing with fire. I totally agree on all accounts. I think it's part of what makes Jay good. And I also agree that that's why I say, like, Kevin Schnall made his own mistakes too, because I don't think you can be at 11 on the like fiery scale in the first inning and expect your team to handle adversity well, right? I get that intensity is part of what made Coastal successful, but like I do think you just need to understand a time and a place. If that's the 8th inning, I don't think any of us are having the same issue with them. It's like, look, it's national title game, you're in the game, whatever. But it was a first inning. You gotta hold yourself together a little bit better there. Let's see. Sean says, next up, can we fix the hit by pitch issues? We cannot reward leaning into pitches. That was consistently inconsistent through the postseason. Tough issue. Yeah. That was also one that got talked about a lot, just in general. And I think we've arrived at a place in college baseball where the hit by pitch thing is just has gone so far beyond trying to always fix it by tweaking the rule, has gotten us to a point where it feels like we're just so far off from the common sense of it. Like at one point we had, there was, I don't know how many of y'all remember this, but if you go back like 7 or 8 years, it feels like, or if you go back 7, 8 years, it was a deal where you couldn't even stand still and get hit. If you stood still and just took it, it was a strike. Thankfully, we've gone away from that. Now if you stand still and you're in the batter's box, like it's what they're trying to get rid of ostensibly is leaning in. But the issue is we're putting umpires in position where we have to look at a review and interpret, well, did the player lower his elbow because he's trying to get hit, or did he lower his elbow because that's just the way his body moves when he spins around? And like, how could you possibly know that as another human being? And we're asking umpires to do that. So I've always just thought we should kind of go back to the common sense way of doing it, which is just like, hey, look, if the ball is in the batter's box, I don't really care if the player leaned in or not. Like, if you want to call it a not hit by pitch, just call it a ball. But let's not reward a pitcher for throwing, like, overcooking a breaking ball and having it land in the batter's box. Like that's where you start to lose people, right? I think it seems reasonable if you just want to call it a ball, call it a ball. But I also just think the biggest thing is we just need to need to stop stopping the game every time someone gets hit on the arm, because right now that's what we're doing. It was no fewer than half a dozen times during the CWS that happened, and it just needs to get cleaned up. All right. Scrolling to make sure I'm all caught up here. Yes, Canes Cats Heat. Congratulations to the Ice Cats. Big win in the Stanley Cup Finals. I don't have time to answer this, Canes Cats Heats, the how would you rank SEC teams in order of NIL recruiting advantages. Don't have time for that on this show. I also would say, and this is not a cop-out, but I would say part of the issue with NIL is that we don't know. Like, I have people who might tell me a certain team has this much money to spend. That doesn't mean that person knows, doesn't mean they're right, because a coach is never going to say exactly how much money they have. So like, even if off the top of my head, I had a good idea of what I've been told about NIL budgets and all that kind of stuff, like that doesn't mean it's correct, because we don't have anywhere where, like, I can look up and see from an open records request, at least for the public schools, how much each school spends on baseball. But what I can't do is look up how much their collective or some third party has paid a player in NIL. Like, that's just not typically searchable. So there's just nobody has any idea how much anybody's making or how much schools have to make, all that kind of stuff. And that's part of where I would like to see NIL stuff go. And not so much for me, because like, whatever, if we don't know the numbers, we don't know the numbers. But like, if I'm a player getting in the portal, and my agent is telling me this other guy got $500,000 and you're better than that guy. Okay, well, I'm going to take his word for it. But then, like, I go to the programs and they're telling me that, well, that's not true. Like, that guy didn't get that much money. we think you're only worth $300,000 because that's what we heard that guy got or whatever. Like, so you're just having to take everybody's word for it. And like, that's not a good position to be in for the player or the coaches, by the way, because the players are coming to them and saying, I have an offer from this school for 500 grand. If you give me 550, I'm coming here. If not, I'm going to go with them. And the program has to take that for they have to just take their word for it. So I think some sort of level of transparency, I think would be huge for all parties, because right now it's not even a free market, because a free market is kind of contingent on the person who's doing the buying and the selling, but the person who's doing the buying be able to comparison shop. And right now you can't actually do that because it's all based on like hearsay information. So anyway, your question was a provocative one because it got me talking about that, but I don't think I could rank the SEC teams in order of NIL and recruiting advantages, even if I had the time and really wanted to, because so many of those pieces of information are just not available to me or anyone for that matter. To go, you heard this is talking about the thing Aaron was ranting about. Is not saying it was not a terrible decision, but how can you say the NCAA lied and we should believe the coach? Well, I guess I would say this, like, and I know you're not talking about me. I get that, Goat, but like, somebody lied in that situation, and that's also just part of like what made it such a joke of a situation. Is like we're now at a point where we have a he said about how it went down, and that's just never a good place to be. Okay, let's see. Robert Rodriguez says not having a head coach in the dugout does affect the game. It does. We have a manager here in KC that continues to lose close games. No, you're right. Not having a head coach does matter. And then you lose your first base coach. So like, you've got the guy who coaches third and Chad Oxendine also managing. So he's having to split his thinking about, he's got to manage the roster and coach third base. And then you've got an off-field coach in Tyler Shoemaker coaching first base. And so like he's out of the dugout. So when they're on offense, Coastal, like there's kind of nobody in the dugout from a coaching perspective. So I agree with you. I just happen to think that it probably didn't matter. Like that's Joe's opinion. Like I think LSU is winning that game regardless, but you're right. Like it does matter ultimately. My answer to this, Sean, is yes. Can ABS fix hit by pitch as well? In the box, take your base, in the zone, strike, in no man's land, you can't lean in. I think yes. Like I think ABS fixes so much of this. All right, folks. Caught up on the comments there. Canes Cats Eats, I see you in there talking about state tuition, the border state stuff. I think you're onto something there. I just wonder if in today's world, where especially in the SEC, where NIL on top of the scholarship stuff just devalues the scholarships a little bit. It still matters, not having to pay out of pocket to go to school, but with these high-end SEC teams, like the scholarship, what they're getting from a scholarship standpoint, and Sean makes a good point, like you can go up to 34 full scholarships. So the in-state, out-of-state thing, probably it just isn't probably going to matter anymore. But it's less about the scholarship money and more about what are you getting in NIL. Like if I give you $100,000, you can spend it on tuition if you want. You can spend it on something else if you want. So the scholarship piece is just not the advantage it used to be, or at least it shouldn't be moving forward. All right. All right, folks. Wanted to say before we get out of here, thanks again for making this just a super fun thing to do every weekend. The interactions, the comments, the questions, all that stuff throughout the season are just super fun, and they challenge me because look, you guys following your teams, sometimes you guys have better information than I do because you're watching every single pitch of every single game, and there's 16 SEC teams plus the rest of the country. So I can't possibly see every pitch of every game of every team. So, I like that sometimes you guys keep me in check a little bit about some information on teams that you guys have that I don't. So that I think that's cool too. So just wanted to say thank you for you guys being here, joining me, whether you join live typically, whether you watch it on replay. I just appreciate you watching. And for those who do watch live, thank you for the interaction. I have a lot of fun with that each and every weekend. So This is the last episode this season, but we're not disappearing off the face of the earth. Mark and I still do a podcast, Highway to Hoover, once a week. We take a few weeks off, typically around the holidays, but for the most part, we'll be coming at you every week with a fresh podcast. We do some recap stuff of the season. We'll also have some interviews. We play some games sometimes. We talk about fall ball when fall ball comes around. So there's still plenty to talk about, and the regular D1 baseball podcast will still be around, and we'll still be writing, but Weekend Waypoints will be done for the off season until we get to February 13th of 2026. That's opening day of next season. And believe you me, it is coming faster than you think. The off season is long, but it ain't that long. So looking forward to getting back around to that when that comes. But that's it for this episode and this season of Weekend Waypoints. Thank you again for joining me today and all season. Thank you for supporting us at d1baseball.com. You know, your subscriptions, your views, your all that stuff. I don't take it for granted that I have a really cool job where I get to cover college baseball for a living, and I don't want to lose sight of the fact that you guys make that possible. So thank you again for that as well. All right, folks, whatever it is you're doing this summer, this off season, enjoy it. College football is just around the corner. I'm excited too. So I know for a lot of you SEC fans, that's where your attention is going to be, and rightfully so. I'll see you on Highway to Hoover. I'll see you on the D1 Baseball podcast, and I'll talk to you then. Take care.